Hello everyone. Today is Monday, 26th of August, 2019. This video is for Brian over at the D&RGW. He asked me how I created the valleys in between my rails, and he also is frustrated with ballasting. So that's what this video is going to cover. And well, enjoy the video, guys. Alright, here is one method of creating the valleys in between your rail sections. It's just a sharp razor knife at an angle, but be cautious when you do this if you already have your feeder wires down. You'll cut right through them feeder wires in a heartbeat. I did it, so I basically went with a soldering iron. That way you might melt the plastic on your feeder just a little bit, the covering plastic, but you won't have any damage, So here I'm using an old soldering iron. It's got those darker manila sections there. That's the caulking that I use to put the foam down with, and the soldering iron doesn't like that too awful much. It takes just a few more seconds to heat through that. But again, be cautious with the soldering iron on those sections, because it'll melt right through that stuff in a heartbeat if you let it. It's with using the soldering iron, you gotta do it really light. Don't dig into it. Just take it right across the top. Let the soldering iron melt that foam just ever so slightly. This method also, there's no mess. You don't have to worry about little debris and all the little foamy pieces and stuff all over the place, especially for you guys that use the beaded white foam. That stuff can be disastrous. Here I had that's where I used to have a switch in the previous yard layout. So I'm just filling that with a piece of foam. It's a 10 millimeter hole that I use for switch activators. I still have to get to those. Here I'm using, when I did this the first time, I noticed that I was just chewing through the ballast, something fierce. So this go around, I'm going to use just a little bit of plaster of Paris, just a real thin coat to coat the deep spots and to also get into the porous part of the foam. That way I don't use as much ballast. It works really well after all said's done. This, I'm just using some watered down brush to get rid of the clumps that are on from the plaster that are on the rails. So I'll come back and I'm going to come back and paint the rails. I haven't painted this section yet. It took about 3 coats is usually what it takes with this mix that I have. And so I had to let it dry in between, and actually I ended up taking a little nap for the last section. But anyway, it's just simple to do, just kind of wash it on there. This is where I wipe the rails off. I just use a clothespin wrapped up in a cloth. It's not even damp, it's just a regular dry cloth. It works really well. Just something to clean them rails off with. Get it while that stuff's still wet. If you're not, then you'll be rubbing on that stuff with a wooden block forever. It works out pretty good though. And here's the finished product before I'm getting ready to do the ballasting. You can see the rails are, I'm satisfied with how the rails turned out. Alright, here's the stuff I'm using for ballasting. It's all Woodland Scenics, 2 shades of gray, light gray, a mix, and out of that I make a little bit darker mix. I got a big jug of that mixed up here, about half of that. And I use Mod Podge and different brushes for the glue to put that down in the crevices, and liquid eyedroppers, different ballast spreaders here and clean up. This one here is the main one, which is just one of them cheap 1-inch brushes with the bristles cut off. I got this from M. Peter LL, which is Peter Lloyd Lewis. He's got a great channel, but this works fabulous. And then on top of that, a couple of spoons, mainly this baby spoon here. Does have another nice end on it also. Just a little bit of a trowel in it. And a big spoon, just a cheap throwaway. Well, that's what I use for ballasting. Alright, here we're going to start doing some ballasting. First I use a little bit of Mod Podge on a brush just to get down into the valley there so it sticks onto the sides and you don't end up filling your whole valley flat. It's kind of defeats the purpose of doing what I'm doing here. It's I just pour the Mod Podge in the cap and brush out of that. There's really not much more to say about spreading the glue, except for this is all these coming up clips. I've sped up a lot of them. I've used some time-lapse photography also, just to kind of keep it going along. And then the baby spoon, put the ballast in between the rails. It works really well that way. Take your brush afterwards and brush it nice and smooth. It's just don't try to overfill the rail. Don't try to make it an even pile all the way down. Try to leave a few little gaps in between so that you have some buffer for when you are spreading. You just don't spill the stuff everywhere. I mean, I realize I'm doing a multi-rail project here, so it really doesn't matter too awful much. But if you're doing single rails, watch the amount of ballast you put on, or you'll spread that stuff everywhere, and you'll end up doing more cleanup than you will ballasting. I think that might be part of the guy's problem. When you use this brush, also go slow. Don't try to whip it really far, because you will spread ballast all over the place if you do it like that. Just go nice and slow into the piles, spread it nice and evenly. You'll come back with your spoon and kind of fill in some of the spots that you missed. No worries, it's simple, easy, smeezy to do. Here I'm just lightly filling in the valleys, trying not to fill too awful much in it. Once you put that in there, don't mess with it, as far as like taking your tool, your spoon end or something, and spreading it down through there, because you'll clump it up. So once you put it on, don't mess with it. Don't try to use a brush and the glue or anything like that. You'll end up with a bunch of clumps, which I don't know. It's kind of easy to take out with your eyedropper. As long as it's still wet, the eyedropper will dissolve it. Here I need to put a couple more sleepers in. I meant to do that earlier, and once I got over to it, I was like, oh, I better put those in before I make more work for myself. Funny thing is, I saved all the sleepers in one container that I used to update the yard with, and I think I have 4 left. Though I do remember throwing away 2 or 3 of them that were just kind of laying around, but that was pretty good. I think it came out pretty good. Here's some more speed up here, some more rapid speed up. Now if you do touch your ballast, you just pat it. Don't rub it, just pat it down just ever slightly, and it'll come out just nice. This is a mixture of alcohol and water, and one little drop of dish soap in there. And you don't need to soak your ballast when you're spraying. You just want something just to break that surface tension, because the glue in the eyedropper, it will just roll right off the top. So that gets kind of frustrating, but just a nice little misting of a coat of water and alcohol to break that surface tension, and you're in like flint. Um, Here I'm taking a little bit of the lighter shade of gray. Um, it's all the same 1375, but it was made at different years. I think they might be 5 or 6 years apart on the dates. But it's yeah, I was really surprised when I got the darker gray. I was loving life. The more color mixes you can get, the better off, because it helps provide depth into the ballast and doesn't look all the same. I will come back later on and use some washes, some dirt, and some grayish and just some grimy color, and do the sleepers up, and I'll also take some of that gray and I'll go around and make spots on the ballast itself too. That just messes over the years and such, and just different discolorations. Ballasting really makes your rail look nice once you get done. Don't be intimidated by doing it. It is somewhat of a time-consuming process, but nothing too bad. I mean, it's the end result is what you're after anyway. So just go slow, do it in steps, and you'll love the results. And here's the finished product. It still needs a little bit of cleanup on the rails and stuff. I'll take a little stiff brush, a small stiff brush, and just hit the rails and maybe the top of the sleepers a little bit. But it looks pretty good. The darker ballast, you can really see that it stands out in there. This is dried probably an hour or so, so you really don't see the glue darkness anymore. And here's some more of the finish. You can see the slight valleys in there that's created, and that's what I was wanting. I didn't want it just flat straight across. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's ballasting is simple to do, I guess, but it's time consuming. And thanks for watching, guys. This is all my hobby cutting tools. The big one up front, I don't use that so much, but it comes in handy, I guess, every now and again. I mainly use your hobby knives, and got an assortment of tips on all those. And these are great to have here too. These ones that tips just break right off. So you got a clean tip every now and again, nice sharp point. This one here is mainly my work one, my pocket knife with a changeable blade on it. That's fabulous. And then you gotta have your saws. I got a little tiny hobby saw here, and the hacksaw blade and a handle, and a couple of hobby saws. That's what I use mainly for my hobby knives.